Can you believe it's been 34 years since the catastrophic Chernobyl disaster? Although decades have passed, the surrounding city of Pripyat remains a no-go zone due to lingering radiation dangers, even with the new safe confinement, a steel shield protecting Chernobyl's reactor number 4. Visiting this area is still strictly off-limits. But here's the things: in 2020, a new threat emerged that could potentially spark another disaster within the exclusion zone. On April 4th, devastating forest fires ignited near the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, putting the entire region on high alert. You might think forest fires are a normal sight, but trust us, they're extremely rare in radioactive hotspots like Chernobyl. Now, imagine if that April 2020 fire or something similar were to head straight for the spent nuclear fuel and the power plant. Disaster could strike. Let's take a closer look at what's left behind from the catastrophic Chernobyl accident. The explosion that destroyed reactor number 4 was so powerful, it left a massive crater, making the area around it one of the most contaminated places on Earth. Reactor number 4 at Chernobyl, completely wiped out. The blast sent massive amounts of radioactive material flying. We're talking isotopes like uranium, plutonium, iodine-131, cesium-137, and more, spreading across a huge area. Initially, the reactor held around 190 tons of nuclear fuel, but estimates suggest anywhere from 5 to 30% of that ended up contaminating the environment. This devastating event takes its title as history's worst nuclear disaster, with a staggering number of victims and long-lasting damage. Imagine being at the very epicenter of the Chernobyl explosion. That's where these 31 brave individuals found themselves. They got hit with a massive dose of radiation, which led to acute radiation sickness and ultimately their tragic loss. The amount they were exposed to, a staggering range of 2 to 20 sieverts. For perspective, people living in areas with high background radiation levels typically get about 1 to 2 sieverts over the course of 20 years. That gives you an idea just how intense this exposure was. Now let's put that radiation dose into perspective. Those initial 31 people actually received a much lower amount, about 100 to 200 times less than what they got right at the accident site. Sadly, though, the impact of the Chernobyl disaster was far-reaching and devastating. Over time, roughly 4,000 more lives were lost due to long-term radiation exposure, and the contaminated area spanned an enormous 200,000 square kilometers. That's equivalent to over 77,220 square miles. But here's a crucial detail: the radioactive fallout wasn't evenly spread. Some of it settled on the Earth's surface, while other parts fell as hazardous radioactive debris. The full extent of Chernobyl's damage became clear after the disaster. A massive 50,000 square meters equivalent to roughly 538,195 square feet of land was rendered useless, no longer fit for farming or growing crops. Entire towns got buried under a thick blanket of radioactive waste, as did cars and other contaminated items, all thanks to heavy-duty machinery. The aftermath led to the creation of an exclusion zone, a 30 kilometers or about 18.6 miles radius around the damaged nuclear plant, covering an enormous 2,600 square kilometers. That's approximately 1,004 square miles. To this day, entry into this highly restricted area remains strictly prohibited, a stark reminder of the lasting impact of the Chernobyl disaster. But here's the thing: not all radioactive elements behave the same way. Some last an incredibly long time, we're talking centuries or even millennia. They can seep deep into the earth and stay there, posing a threat for generations. Their half-life, which is the time it takes for their radioactivity to reduce by half, varies greatly. For instance, strontium-90 has a relatively short half-life of around 29 years, whereas Am-240 lasts an astonishing 433 million years, and plutonium-239 sticks around for over 24,000 years. That's a weight that's hard to wrap your head around, right? Fast forward from those radioactive elements. Let's dive into a real-life situation that'll give you a sense of just how quickly nature can change our environment, literally overnight. In 2020, a small fire between two towns quickly turned into a massive blaze, ravaging 12 entire towns and even a cemetery. Initially brought under control in just 10 days, the flames were thought to be tamed. But Mother Nature had other plans, with powerful winds reigniting the inferno. The second wave of destruction was so intense that hundreds of emergency responders and their heavy-duty equipment had to scramble into action to stop it in its tracks. The fire that swept through the exclusion zone had left its mark, a whopping 115 square kilometers. That's about 4 miles of charred land and smoldering remains, with some areas still too hazardous for rescue crews to access safely. You might remember we mentioned the infamous Red Forest earlier. It was one of the areas that faced catastrophic radiation after the 1986 disaster. What started as a deadly dose of radiation turning trees red and yellow ended in an eerie rebirth. The forest regrew, albeit with some still radioactive hotspots. This time around, the fire within the exclusion zone proved to be extremely tough to extinguish, making the already treacherous terrain even more challenging for those fighting to contain it. But here's the thing. The fire was just the start of a much bigger problem. If another blaze breaks out inside the exclusion zone, it could take months or even years to put out safely. And while we were dealing with the flames, something else was brewing. Toxic smoke and tar started spreading rapidly towards major cities. The capital city of Ukraine, Kiev, found itself enveloped in a thick haze, hitting record high air pollution levels for days on end. Now, let's talk about what could have happened next, those ancient radioactive elements we've been storing underground for millennia. They can hitch a ride on the wind, carrying not just their own radioactive cargo, but also pollutants from the fire, potentially endangering areas far beyond the exclusion zone. The real concern is whether the contamination area has just grown bigger, but we can't say for sure yet. What's even more alarming, though, is how close the fire got to Pripyat's outskirts, a mere 2 kilometers or 1.24 miles away. Luckily, rain finally helped firefighters bring it under control in that sensitive zone. Here's what's got scientists worried. Radiation levels are on the rise, and they're seeing spikes that are 16.5 times higher than usual in the heart of the burn zone. But despite this, it looks like we dodged a bullet similar to the one after the nuclear power plant disaster. That's the good news for now. And here's another hint. Although we've managed to avoid disaster so far, experts warn that trouble might be just around the corner, and it's coming sooner than you think. You've got to hand it to the engineers who built the new steel sarcophagus. It's made to withstand some serious heat. Steel has a melting point of around 1,370 to 1,500 degrees Celsius or 2,498 to 2,732 Fahrenheit. And guess what? The hottest forest fires can only reach temperatures between 700 and 900 degrees Celsius or 1,292 to 1,692 Fahrenheit. That's still hundreds of degrees short. So, for now the danger zone is safe from the flames. Hold up, you think that's hot? Think again. That empty land between the forest and the nuclear site is basically a fire break. The grass just isn't going to be able to muster enough heat to threaten our steel hero. But, as we all know, no building is completely bulletproof, and this one has its own Achilles heel, the ventilation system. If something goes wrong there, those super tiny radioactive particles can start getting blown out with even greater force. A potentially disastrous scenario that's definitely worth keeping an eye on. Fast forward a few days, those radioactive particles are now airborne, carried by the wind across hundreds of kilometers or miles, potentially putting millions at risk. It's not immediate, but over time, inhaling these toxic elements will start taking a toll on people's health. The worst part, radioactive waste can linger in our bodies for ages, wreaking havoc on organs and tissues. We're looking at a ticking time bomb here, and as unsettling as it sounds, it's crucial to be prepared and know what to expect. Now, let's dive back into the world of spent nuclear fuel. This stuff packs a serious punch when it comes to radioactivity, way more than what you'd find in reactors today. But before you start imagining doomsday scenarios, here's the good news. This potent material is locked away tight. Enormous structures made from thick, reinforced concrete shield the containers, which are themselves built with a powerful steel and cast iron alloy. Basically, an impenetrable fortress for your safety. But just how secure are these storage units? Well, they're not only resistant to human error or natural disasters, they can also withstand the intense heat of a raging fire. And we've seen some crazy scenarios where fires have started near these facilities, like when dry grass gets torched, or when an electrical wire malfunctions and sparks. It's amazing how quickly one little spark can ignite a blaze that could potentially threaten this highly guarded storage. You'd think a fire would wreak havoc everywhere, but what happens when it hits a nuclear power plant's contamination zone? The aftermath is nothing short of devastating, not just for wildlife trying to survive in the surrounding forests, but also for humans caught in the crossfire. It's crucial we stay informed about such disasters and take all necessary